Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Adams County, and we're going to take an Adams County barn tour here today. And the reason I'm standing at the Schenck Barn is because this is one of the oldest existing barns in Adams County. It wasn't here originally, it was brought here, dismantled and brought here by the Schenck brothers. And we're going to start with this old 1840-ish barn because it's just a great place to start. And Bob Sherman, I wanted you to lead us on this tour because you've led college groups and other tour groups on barn tours, not only in Adams County, but in other places as well. You're a cultural historian. And for somebody like you, barns tell not only the story of agriculture, they tell a story of people and cultures. And the way they built them and the way they used them tell an awful lot about the people that settled this country.
Exactly. I mean, we brought a lot of cultural baggage with us when we came across the pond, you know. And, you know, why do we have a barn? Why is it like it is today? Well, and a grandkid might ask his grandfather, why is a barn like this? We've always built them like this. It has nothing to do with what about, you know, changing. This is the way we've always built this barn, and that's the interest.
And different cultures have completely different ideas of what a barn.
Absolutely. I mean, you go in the Hudson Valley, for instance, and you'll see Hudson, you know, Dutch barns. You go in Pennsylvania and you'll see Schweitzer barns or German barns. And I hope that we can do another show sometime about the German 4-bay barns in northern Adams County. You know?
Why not?
Yeah.
Speaking of Adams County, let's look at this Schenck barn here. Tell me just a little bit about it.
You wouldn't know it by looking at it, and that was a great thing. I met Dave a long time ago when he had his barn models, I think, in Champaign, and we got talking, you know, about, because we were interested in barns, and we've been involved with the National Barn Alliance, and we go to meetings, and you know, and so it's. But you know, he said, I got to know a barn, and you know, and first time I drove here, I think, yeah, right, you know. But once you get inside,
it doesn't look old.
Oh no, it blows your mind, and I mean, it's just really great. And it's like, you know, it's like we'll look at later today. We'll look at, you know, timber frame, you know, barns, and with the different ways that they're put together, kind of thing. So it'll be interesting. So this is an early one. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask Dave to take us inside next.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you for being
here. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, Dave Schenck, you are a barn fanatic.
Oh, I am.
I mean, we're not going to go into this, but this is one of your creations here. This is the round barn that people could see at the Adams County Fairgrounds. This is a replica of that barn.
Yes.
But you wanted a barn so bad that you went down the road to the 10-house barn, and you said, can I have it? And they said, go ahead and take it. And you and your brother took it apart and moved it here and built it.
Yeah.
We're in the loft
of
that very barn, built around 1840, I guess.
Yes.
And when you look at these massive pieces of wood that you and your brother had to move, it was a job, wasn't it?
It was a job. It really was. It was great job. Great job. A lot of fun. Nobody got hurt. My two sons helped on the weekends, but my brother and I moved all these big beams, moved most of them ourselves.
I mentioned how big they are. Point out to us how long these beams are that we're looking at.
From this peg right up there to over there, down before the last bay, I'm 42 foot long. And then these 8x8s oak, they're made out of hand-hewed oak, and they're all 32 foot long.
My goodness.
I can't imagine taking a tree, because I've got a sawmill and cut trees down. You cut one and start on it with an axe, and 32 foot long, it'd have to be so big on one end. I can't imagine chopping all that wood off.
I can't imagine either. How long did it take the two of you to do this?
About 3 months. We had the roof on it where it could stand the winter. We didn't have the lean-to we built onto it to make it a lot nicer downstairs. And we finished that the next spring when it started warming up. But we poured concrete down below and insulated the floor and everything. We heat it and it's air conditioned real easy.
Now, we mentioned, boy, it doesn't look old. Well, in fact, you do have a new foundation under it.
Oh, yes.
You got a new roof on top of it, and you've got steel siding on
siding.
it. So that's why it doesn't look so old anymore.
Well, it looks like a new building.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about it, you come inside, it's the barn. And sure, you know, it'll last for another 100 years, if not longer, if it doesn't catch on fire or something, you know, wind. And it's just something to have the rest of your life. And you saved it. It would have been gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. It would have been gone.
Yeah, and you know what? They don't make things like this anymore.
They don't. Bob said earlier that they'd made barns. This is how they made all the barns. Well, they don't make them anymore. There's no barns like it anymore. It's just a part of our past.
Did you learn anything when you were moving this thing? Did you learn anything about how they were built, or
Oh yes, and how it's surprising. We took a tape measure, and when we made the foundation for this thing over there, measured all the posts upstairs because they weren't kicked out, and we measured across, and it wasn't even an inch out of square on something. This is 32 by 68, and it wasn't even out of square an inch.
Wow.
Now somebody knew what the heck they were doing.
Yep.
Most people wouldn't do that today with a pole building, and they wouldn't. And to have it hand hewed, and they got everything marked with Roman numerals.
Well, let's take a look at that, by the way. I mean, I think some people called those marriage marks or something.
Marriage marks.
Is there a place where we can see these Roman
Right
numerals?
here, there's one right there. Let me move this here thing out of the way. Can you see that right
Well,
there?
I sure
dark.
can. It's kind of in a dark spot, but I think that's V11, isn't it? That would be 7, maybe? Is that V11?
Yeah, I'd say that was 7.
So he marked, this piece of wood here was marked.
Marked.
So that after laying it out, he knew exactly where that
Knew
goes.
exactly where it went. And all these pegs, we had to drive these all out. This one don't even have a peg in it, but it's sitting down in there. And we drove most of them out. I had a steel bar and a rod to get them started, and then beat on them with a hammer to get them out of
My
there.
goodness. Did they come out intact? Were you able
Most
to
all
reuse
of them
them?
were good.
No kidding.
Some
You could
people said
reuse
they put old new ones back in, but they were solid as a rock. So I drove, because it's nothing to move. Not really. This barn's really stronger now than it was, with all the metal screwed to it.
Well, Dave, we're looking through this photo album of that period of time that it took you to dismantle the old one, pour the footer for the new one, put it up, move it, put it up, put the roof back on. Wow. But here we are, we're on the bottom floor now,
Right.
on your new foundation, on your new concrete floor. And what I find interesting here is you used as much of everything as you could from that old building, didn't you?
Sure.
What's our roof? What's our ceiling
We
here?
took the tin off the roof, and it was rusty. But we turned it upside down and screwed it to the ceiling and then painted it. We have a few blisters now, but it's been 10 years, so it hasn't been too bad.
Wow, it's not bad at all.
And
Not
you know,
bad at
it was on there. They put it on, I think, during the Depression. They had trouble getting the metal, which is really a story in itself.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get long pieces, so they used a lot of short pieces. But we took it all off, kept it, and screwed it to the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
And it worked out good.
And what do you use this barn for now?
We have a woodworking shop, and we use it for a garage, and we use it for everything, really.
Yeah, it's the place for the men to hang out and keep stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, we were talking about this process of moving this. My goodness, you had one little flatbed trailer,
Yeah.
I guess. to
20-foot
move
flatbed trailer.
30 and 40 foot long beams
Pieces,
and
yep.
pieces of wood. And actually, you did it without anybody losing a limb or getting
Nobody
really
got hurt.
badly hurt, huh?
That's what one guy said. He couldn't believe we didn't get hurt. But it went together really, really good.
Yeah.
It was the most fun thing I've ever done, ever.
Well, here in Payson, which is in far southern Adams County, we are at the Oakley, actually the Baker Oakley farm.
They
I
call it
guess.
Longview Farm.
Longview Farm. Okay. And Hal Oakley, this farm has been in your family for what, more than 150 years?
Almost 160.
Wow. I mean, that's really almost unprecedented.
Yes, yes, it is.
And the reason we're here is to look at this magnificent old barn. This was built in about 1850. And if we look over far on the right, tell us what we're looking at over there.
Well, my understanding is the far right portion was the barn that was here when my great-great-great-grandparents moved here to the county in 1851 and bought this property sometime shortly thereafter. So that barn was there already. And then later, my great-great-great-grandparents built the larger part of the barn here to the west of that.
So the 1850, then this was built on sometime later. And in fact, it's undergone some renovations throughout the years as well, hasn't it?
It has, and probably the early part of the barn was maybe 1840s or so, and then this was added in the 1850s when they moved here. And this part has also undergone renovations, as you said. There's a lean-to added to the back, some internal changes that you'll see in a few minutes. But over the years, it's been an evolution, really. As needs and technology changed, they made changes to the barn. So it was probably a working barn up through the 1980s. And today we use it mainly for storage.
Yeah. I've asked Bob if he would take us in and sort of show us some of the finer points. So it's okay with you if we go and poke around
Of course,
a little
please
bit.
do.
Okay, thank you. Well, Bob, 1840s, 1850s. It's like a museum in here.
It is indeed a museum in here. It's a farming museum without the labels, you know.
Exactly. You got to kind of figure it out on your own.
Sure. You know, from hames, from horses, and you know, and there's a part of a threshing or early binder hanging on the wall. We got feed boxes here, so you can see that animals were in here. You got down below. We have the mangers were originally the cows were, and
they would enter from that lower level. You can see there's a way for them to
exactly.
get in from the field.
I mean, and then you look up and you see these hand-riven rafters. You know, still have the bark on them. Here's a early beam. It looks like it's oak from just looking at the bark, and you can, you know, for a post and it's amazing look at how many beams there are for this little structure. So this is really overkill in terms of built.
It was built to never fall down.
It was exactly, and here it is today, 160 years, 170 years ago. Later, and it's still here. So it's.
I want to look one more time at these rafters because this fascinates me. What we're looking at is small trees that were halved, right? They were kind of cut in half. So
not quite halved, but just flat surface for it. Yeah.
And the bark is still on there 150 years later. Can you tell what kind of tree that is?
It looks like birch was one of them, but this is probably oak over here. Could even be walnut, you know. Some of these, and looks like poplar here. It was what was here.
They cleared it and they used what was here, right?
Absolutely, and it's that old story again when people say, "Oh my gosh, there's a walnut beam," and we're thinking, you know, 200 years later, of furniture rather than the walnut tree was in the way. We needed this space, and we had a 40-foot beam, and so we're going to use this walnut one. And people say, "Oh, walnut." So you know, it's just fun. Here's part of a plow. You know, I mean an old jug, a milk can. You know, and it's just incredible. Here's the chain for.
Right down here.
Yeah. So it's you're right. It's a museum without labels.
I'm going to ask the man who farms this land and who actually cut some of the wood for the newer part of the barn to show us that side.
And they did some restoration. We even got a scalding kettle here over here. We got an anvil laying around. I mean, it's terrific. You know, it's great.
Well, Mike Hummel, you've been farming this property for about 30 years.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, you actually helped support this barn because in places it was falling in, and you also work wood. So you cut some of the beams, I guess. Is beams the right word? Supports for this?
Right.
To keep this from falling in entirely.
Yeah. I mean, it always was a solid barn, but there was starting to get some spots where there previously there'd probably been maybe a leaky spot in the roof, and there's some beams that were starting to fail and give away. And Signe Oakley and Hal, the ones owner, they wanted to keep it as long as they could and solid. So we cut some. I got a Wood-Mizer sawmill. I cut them 10 by 10s for the beams up the top and the new post here. And so they cut away all the old beams and put new in that section, and then tied that in there with the iron, because that one real long one there, that's all original. It had 4 big beams in there. They're probably 30, 40 foot long, all one piece. It's got some huge beams.
The one we see that's been repaired on the end that runs clear across there, that's original,
Yeah.
and that's more than 30 feet long. That's
Right.
a big tree.
That's a big tree.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
And I'm sure they put it all up there by hand.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so
But-
that's original, and then up here at the top over here, the ones that you did, you can only cut a 21-footer, right?
Right.
But then oh my
Right.
goodness.
And then we seamed it right on the post then. And then they did the corner of the barn was settling in, the foundation was settling in. So she had that corner raised. She actually had some Amish people from Clayton come in and do the work and raised that corner up. And then underneath the old original one we was looking at before, that main side of the barn was settling out. So they went underneath the crawl space and took out some flat rock and things that originally, and rebuilt and remortared the supports underneath. So basically, they kind of went through and re-supported it and firmed it up to where you have it's got a good roof and good foundation.
Right.
So so it should last quite a while.
Yeah. Now we've got the sides that need some attention, but that's going to get
Yeah,
done
that's
too.
probably that'll be phase 2.
Yeah.
I gotta saw out some 1x12s, and actually I can saw clear full width. So we'll probably cut some real wide siding like the original and try to get that fixed, and maybe replace some of the ones over here. So But it's just they're trying to get it in shape so it'll last another 50, 100 years, right?
Bob, Mike was talking about maybe replacing it with some pretty wide siding.
Great,
And one of the
great.
first things that you mentioned when we came up to this barn, which fascinated you about it, was how wide these boards are.
Yeah, look how, I mean, you can see, I can tell you this is probably pine. I mean, just from looking at it and the way it looks. But the size of this is, you know, this is like first growth timber from not necessarily here. It might have been from Wisconsin and rafted down. But I mean, you don't find boards like this in a lumber yard anymore.
No.
I mean, and you can see that, I mean, you know, how they're weathered and they've gotten this nice silver color. And Hal was asking me, you know, should we paint it? And I said, no. I mean, this is nature's art. This is so beautiful.
It really is beautiful.
Yeah.
And look, it's 2 feet. It's almost 2 feet wide.
Yeah.
That's a big tree.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it was a huge tree, and that, you know, this isn't near the bark at all. This is right, you know, cut through a big mill. You no longer see the saw marks because of the weather of the water itself, and the weather has done with wind and rain and sand and blowing and whatever. But it's just so beautiful.
It is. Well, Bob, near Payson,
Yeah.
in Adams County,
Right.
The Ippenson barn,
Barn.
right over your shoulder.
Right. That's a.
You are intrigued with this barn.
Oh, this is a great barn. This is a great bank barn. It's a great bank barn.
What makes it a bank barn?
It's the ramp that goes up into the threshing floor. You know, that's right here. That's, you know, grass covered, but there's stone walls on either side that hold the soil in, and then there's a bank. Then once you get near the barn, there's a little bridge that you go across, so that the bank isn't pushing against the barn wall itself, but so that, you know, you're not having hydrostatic pressure when water's in the ramp and all that kind of stuff. So.
So that bank would have been built at the same time the barn was
Absolutely.
built. And maybe the first thing built to
Or
get
after
up
the
in-
foundation was up, so that now you've got a ramp to get to the material up, the timbers and the rest of the material for the building the barn. You've got a way to get up to it. Otherwise, it's up a ladder,
Yeah.
and lifting beams and stuff is not cool going up a ladder. So,
Well, let's go up in there.
okay. We're on the bridge.
Okay, so we're on the bridge. Before we go in, Bob, one thing you mentioned that these stones here obviously are local, and
Yeah.
they're really, really hard
Yeah,
stones.
these are
aren't
the white dolomite that you find all over Quincy, in the foundations and footings of barns and houses in the city as well.
they? Excellent. Okay, now this would have been, we're standing on, I guess, what you call the threshing floor.
This is a threshing floor. This is a 3-bay barn. Bay 1, center bay, bay 3. Okay?
Okay.
And originally there would have been doors, and we will show a picture of those early doors, but there were doors here on the end for the wind to go from the west to the east across the threshing floor. And so this would have been done with a flail. And you know, one of these times I'm going to bring some tools along so you people know what a flail
Now, a
looks.
flail, though, that's what you actually beat the
Absolutely.
the grain with.
Yes,
To
so-
separate the thatch. or
Yeah,
the-
and, and then the wind blows the chaff out the back. And then you have a board across the back, and you know what that's been called.
and that's the board at the bottom, right?
Well, but it would be, but that's not
Yeah.
the one now. But there would have been a board there. And you know what that is.
Well, since I've talked to you about this, I do, but many of our audience don't. So.
That is called the threshold, that hold the grain in and the chaff goes out. And so we use this term, you know, like in our houses, well, the threshold. Well, it comes from a barn and it comes from threshing. And here's a perfect example when we have a west wind blowing across the
Okay,
east.
so it blows all the dust and the junk out, and the grain stays in.
The grain stays in.
Now, let's look at the upper parts of this, because there are some really notable features of this barn from, what are we, in the 1870s? here?
Yeah.
In the 1870s. Point a few out.
Okay, you remember we looked at the Oakley barn and the queen post for vertical, what Mike was talking about when you were in the barn. Well, here we have the canted queen posts, and queen posts are when there are two holding up the purlin plate, and the purlin plate runs midway through the rafters. And you see what this queen post does is now, it's because it's canted, the purlin plate now sets 90 degrees to the post, and the rafters then lay right on a flat side of the purlin post rather than on or purlin plate, rather than like on the Oakley barn where they cut across and they only set across the corner. So we've, you know, it's like, oh, this is,
Does that allow it to support more weight? Is that what it allows it to do if it's on it flat instead of?
well, it allows the rafters to sit, you know, on more weight and support the rafters better. And you see, we still have those queen post supports, or what they would originally call the principal rafter. And then, you know, these rafters are sawn rafters, and you can see they're different than the ones we looked at in the Oakley barn. And it's, you know, it's just I mean, the way this barn is put together is just so beautiful. And you don't see marks from an adze and a broadaxe. These are all sawn timbers. So we know that, you know, we're a little getting down the road, and we're seeing timbers that have been sawn on a mill someplace nearby. And you can see that there are even circular saw marks on these posts. So you know that we're in the realm of a sawmill that had probably a 4-foot diameter wheel that was cutting these timbers.
Okay, Bob, still in Adams County, working our way toward modern times here.
Yeah.
We've seen some very old barn, a very old barn, worked our way up. Now this is an 1890s
Barn.
barn, I guess. Huh? What do we learn? What are people learning in building barns that are doing differently now?
Well, you know, the timbers are being sawn. They're not being hewn like we've seen in those other barns earlier today. The hay mounds are a little bit taller, and we've got a gambrel roof here, which means there's more hayloft space.
Okay.
You know, instead of a gable roof, which means that, but by curving the roof, you create that much more space inside. And you know, it was a dairy barn, and underneath the cattle were down underneath, and right now they don't have cattle here other than bighorn, longhorn, Texas longhorn sheep, and there's a couple of skulls staying around here. But
in their day, those would have been dairy cattle,
Yeah,
and they would have
sure.
brought them in to milk them
underneath, right?
Okay. all
And
right.
the hay mow is up above. I mean, there's a threshing floor too, but it was mostly dairying, so you have basically hay for the dairy operation for feeding during the wintertime.
Yeah. Now we see a variety of coverings on the
Yeah,
side
yeah.
of this. How do you explain that?
Well, you know, I look at it and I say, okay, this was prior to the Tin Man getting here and covering. What the underneath siding is, I can see that it's novelty siding or drop siding, what they call the horizontal boards, and you can see it on the front. Well, the Tin Man came here, so this is an insulation, you know, that was probably during this, about the time of the the Second World War or before. And so it was like, okay, houses were sided with it too to make them modern. And, you know, even though it was asbestos, or not asbestos, but asphalt kind of stuff, you know, and it was probably 1/2 inch thick, and it made it look like bricks. And it's like,
Right.
but, you know, and like I say, it's before the Tin Man got here. And then the Tin Man came after the war, and we have aluminum siding houses and then steel siding and whatnot. So, but that's what's going on here.
We're looking at the foundation
Yeah.
now. The other foundations that we've seen today have all been stone.
Stone, right.
Yeah. And now the concrete is making its entrance.
yeah,
now.
yeah, and you can see old concrete at one part here, and then there's been a replacement part, but you can tell the old concrete from the new concrete. And but it's, you know, it's basically a dairy barn with a hayloft. And I mean, we've learned some things about how we can get more hay in the barn. And we'll look inside, and we've got a picture of the barn with the star, you know, kind of thing. So and we got an
Back
early
in the day, we've got an early picture.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So the star is still there, and we got windows, and the windows in the door are a very important thing, because when the barn is closed, there's no light in there unless you have windows. And earlier barns like this would have had a transom light across the top, so that you still have light inside the barn, because once you close the doors, because in the wintertime, you know, cold air would be flying through there while you're trying to do something, and so that's the reason for the windows. And but it's you know, that star's been on this barn for at least 50 years or better. So, you know, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know what the meaning is from the family, but somebody wanted it on there, and it's been in the Gooding family for quite some time now. So,
Well, I'll tell you what. There's not a lot to see because
Okay.
it's chock
full of hay, and perfect.
But
It's what it's supposed
it's
to.
what
It's
it's for.
function.
But let's go and just take a look
Okay,
inside.
okay.
Okay, if we can move those
Okay.
doors.
Yeah. perfect.
I'm sure that one guy used to do this himself, Bob. One of the Goodings used to do that himself.
Yeah, and boy, the smell.
It smells like, smells like hay.
It
doesn't
smells
it?
like hay.
It is.
Smells great, you know.
Okay, now, as you said, there's so much interior room here.
Yeah.
It's just for hay storage, but interesting. Now, look at to the right here. You'll see that there's rungs of a ladder.
It is. It is. The ladder was built in the barn when the barn was being built, and it goes all the way up to nowhere. And people, well, why does the ladder go all the way up to nowhere? Well, when the barn was full of hay, it's the only way you can get to the top of the hay mound. And if it was loose hay, you can see there was a track here, so there was a track across the top, which had probably a big clam that picked up loose hay and dumped it in the loft, and then you put it wherever you want it. You moved the track and you put it in. But you know, it's like, oh, and here we got our queen posts again. You see, but these are vertical. So now the rafters are those purlin beams you see are probably shaped on the other side so that pockets, so that when the one rafter comes down and then it changes pitch, now you've got that more roof rather than just coming down at as a gable roof angle would be. And so the pitch is shallower at the top but steeper at the bottom part.
Right.
And that allows for more hay storage. And you can see it's wide open and beautiful place to store hay.
At the very top center, you'll see that you can see daylight up there. Is there a reason for that?
Oh yeah. It's to keep the barn from burning down. I mean, from green hay and hay allowing the hot air to escape out through that ventilator, so that if you put green hay in a barn, spontaneous combustion can take place. But I mean, obviously farmers leave it on the ground before they bale it so that they do not have that problem, and you want it to dry somewhat. So, but it smells so good in here. Oh, really great.
In northern Adams County, there's an interesting array of Pennsylvania German 4-bay barns. That'll be the subject of an upcoming Illinois Story. With another Illinois Story in Adams County, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
For a DVD copy of this episode of Illinois Stories, send 1995 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, broadcast date, and topic. You may also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605 or by using our secure server by going online to networkknowledge.tv.